My daughter smiled as she chose her mother-in-law over me on her big day, but she had no idea her perfect celebration would collapse before her very eyes. Stay with me, because what I did next left everyone in shock. And before we move forward, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps these stories alive. The sound of laughter echoed through the grand ballroom as I stood just outside its gilded doors, clutching the invitation card that now felt like a cruel joke. Gold-embossed letters still shimmered under the chandelier's light. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Amelia Grace Thompson, my own daughter's wedding. My Amelia. Yet. When I tried to step inside, the usher blocked my path with a raised hand and a nervous smile. "Ma'am, the bride requested that you not be admitted," he whispered, as if saying it softly would hurt less. For a second, my mind refused to process the words. My daughter had banned me from her wedding. Me, the woman who raised her, who sacrificed sleep, youth, and health to give her the very life she now celebrated. I pressed my palm against the cold marble pillar for balance as the reality sank in. Just beyond those doors, Amelia was laughing with her new family while I was treated like an intruder. This is not just a story about heartbreak. It is about betrayal, truth, and how one happy day collapsed before everyone's eyes. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear is something no mother should ever have to endure. And if you are watching this, please subscribe, because stories like mine deserve to be heard. I stumbled backward into the corridor, the distant echo of music pounding against my chest like a cruel drum. I thought of the years I worked double shifts at the diner to afford Amelia's piano lessons, the nights I skipped meals so she could have enough for her school trips, the dresses I never bought, the shoes I never wore, because everything went to her future. And now, I was not even allowed to watch her walk down the aisle. The usher's eyes flickered with pity, but rules were rules. He handed me a small folded note. "She asked me to give you this." With trembling fingers, I opened it. Her handwriting, once so familiar, stared back at me. "Mom, please don't make a scene. This is my day, and I want peace. Mother-in-law will walk me down the aisle. It's for the best." The paper slipped from my hands as if it burned. For the best. Since when was replacing your mother with someone else the best? My vision blurred, but I forced myself to stay upright. Rage and sorrow battled in my chest, but beneath it all was a gnawing question. Why? Why had Amelia chosen her mother-in-law over me? I couldn't just leave. Not yet. My instincts told me something was wrong, deeply wrong. I moved to a quiet corner of the hallway, pulled out my phone, and texted my neighbor Clara, who had always been like a sister to me. "She banned me. Her mother-in-law is taking my place." Clara's reply came almost instantly. "Don't leave. Watch carefully. Something is off. Remember what I told you about control." Her words echoed in my mind. Clara had warned me months ago that Amelia's fiancé's family seemed too eager, too involved, too controlling. I brushed it off then, thinking love was blinding me to possibilities. But standing outside those doors, abandoned and humiliated, I realized Clara had been right all along. That's the ceremony began. I found myself drawn to the sound of Amelia's voice through the heavy oak panels. It trembled, not with joy, but with hesitation. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used when she was 6 and lied about breaking the neighbor's window. A fragile, fearful edge. The ballroom erupted in applause as vows were exchanged. I pictured Amelia, radiant and white, but with another woman holding her arm. My stomach churned. That was supposed to be me. I wanted to storm in, to scream the truth of my pain, but something told me to wait. If Amelia had truly turned her back on me, I needed to understand why. And if someone had manipulated her into doing so, I needed proof. I lingered in the shadows until the ceremony ended and the reception began. Guests poured out, laughing, sipping champagne, snapping photos. That was when I saw her. Vivian tall, elegant, draped in silk. She basked in the attention of every guest as though it was her own wedding. She clung to Amelia's arm possessively, whispering into her ear, her eyes sharp and calculating. Amelia laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh I raised her with. It was brittle, practiced, the laugh of someone trying to survive in a cage of glass. A knot twisted in my gut. Vivian wasn't just a proud mother. She was orchestrating something. I slipped behind a floral arrangement near the entrance, half hidden from sight. From there, I could observe unnoticed. And what I saw chilled me to the bone. Vivian held Amelia's phone, typing rapidly while Amelia glanced nervously around. When Amelia reached out to take it back, Vivian pulled it away, wagging her finger like a scolding parent. The message was clear. control. Then, in a voice low but sharp enough to carry across the polished floor, Vivian said, "Remember, darling, this day is about appearances. You'll thank me later. Mothers only hold you back." The words sliced through me like a blade. My breath hitched. Mothers hold you back. I wanted to scream. Without me, Amelia wouldn't even be here. I pulled out my phone and hit record, angling it through the gap in the flowers. If Vivian thought she could erase me from my daughter's life, she was about to face a storm she never anticipated. As the speeches began, the tension in the room thickened. Vivian rose first, clinking her glass. Her smile was poised, her tone dripping with faux sincerity. "Today, I am proud to welcome Amelia, the daughter I never had. She is everything I dreamed of in a child, and I am honored to stand beside her as she begins this journey." The applause was thunderous, but my heart pounded with fury. Each word was a dagger. She had not only stolen my place at the wedding, but was publicly claiming Amelia as her own. Amelia's eyes darted to the crowd, then to Vivian, and finally, fleetingly, to the door where I stood hidden. For the briefest second, I saw it: regret, pain, a silent plea for rescue. That was all I needed. I stepped forward, ignoring the gasps of guests as they recognized me. My voice, steady but laced with fire, cut through the clinking glasses. "Funny, Vivian," I said, my words echoing across the ballroom. "You speak as if you raised her, as if you sacrificed everything for her. But let's set the record straight. Amelia already has a mother, and she is standing right here." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Every eye turned to me. Amelia's lips parted, her face pale. Vivian's smile faltered, just for a second, before she quickly regained composure. "Security," she snapped, her voice sharp. "Remove this woman." Two men in suits began moving toward me, but I lifted my phone high, the recording still playing. Vivian's voice rang out, clear and damning. "Mothers only hold you back." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. I locked eyes with Amelia, her facade cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. The celebration that Vivian had so carefully orchestrated was unraveling before her very eyes. And that was only the beginning. The ballroom had frozen in time, every whisper hanging like smoke in the air, after my words cut through Vivian's carefully curated illusion. For one moment, she looked less like a polished socialite and more like a cornered predator, her eyes sharp and calculating, scanning for a way to strike back. Amelia stood in the center of the crowd, her tears glistening under the chandelier, her trembling hands clutching the hem of her gown. She looked like a child again, torn between two voices that had been pulling at her soul. One was mine, built on sacrifice and love, and the other was Vivian's, built on manipulation and control. I raised my phone higher, the recording echoing once more for the crowd to hear. "Mothers only hold you back." The words, venomous and arrogant, poisoned the very air of what was meant to be Amelia's most cherished day. Some guests gasped, others shook their heads in disbelief. A few began murmuring among themselves, and I could tell by their furrowed brows that suspicion had begun to sprout. "Turn that off," Vivian snapped, her composure cracking as she gestured frantically toward security. "She is ruining everything." But it was too late. The crowd had heard enough to plant doubt, and when doubt enters a celebration, it spreads like wildfire. I took a step forward, my voice steady, my heart pounding like a war drum. "This is not about me embarrassing my daughter. This is about the truth. Amelia, you need to tell them what is happening. You need to tell them why I was banned from being by your side today." Her lips quivered, her gaze darted to Vivian, who tightened her grip on Amelia's arm, with nails digging into her skin. Amelia winced, and the crowd noticed. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. The DJ, unsure of what to do, let the microphone squeal before cutting the music entirely. Silence swallowed the room whole. Every guest, every relative, every friend of the groom stared at my daughter, waiting for her to speak. I could see the war inside her, the weight of expectation crushing down. But then Vivian leaned close and whispered something sharp into her ear, words I could not catch, but whose venom was clear in the way. Amelia's shoulders stiffened. Enough was enough. I stepped further into the light, facing Vivian directly. "Whatever lies you've fed her, whatever hold you think you have, it ends today. She is my daughter, and I will not stand here and let you erase me." Vivian's smile returned, brittle and cold. "You are pathetic," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You are a jealous, bitter woman, who cannot accept that her daughter has finally found happiness without her. You have no place here. Found happiness without her. You have no place here. The words stung, but I stood my ground, because something deeper than humiliation was gnawing at me now. This was not just about pride. This was about danger. Clara's warning replayed in my mind, and Amelia's nervous laughter, her fearful eyes, the forced smile, it all added up to a puzzle I was beginning to solve. Vivian was not just controlling, she was dangerous. As I stood there, piecing together her calculated moves, a man's voice cut through the tension. Is this true? It was Henry, the groom's uncle, his tone suspicious and heavy. Vivian, did you really say those words? Vivian laughed, but the sound was hollow. Of course not. She doctored that recording. This is nothing but a desperate attempt to ruin my son's wedding. All eyes turned back to me. I felt the weight of judgment pressing against my ribs, but I also knew this was my chance. If you believe that, then why did you hide Amelia's phone? Why did you keep her from contacting me? Why was she forced to write me a note telling me not to come? A gasp ran through the room. I reached into my purse and held up the note. Amelia's handwriting scrawled across it. My voice shook, not with fear, but with righteous fury. She is being controlled. She is being silenced. And if no one stands up right now, this will not end with today's humiliation. It will only get worse. Vivian's mask slipped, just for an instant. Her eyes flared with hatred as though I had unveiled her darkest secret. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered that maybe I was right. Maybe Amelia had been manipulated. Others clung to Vivian's reputation, unwilling to believe she could be so cruel. It was then that Amelia broke. Her sob tore through the silence, raw and desperate. Stop, she cried, pulling away from Vivian's grip. Please stop pretending. The room erupted with shock. Cameras flashed, guests leaned in, and all eyes fell on Amelia. Her voice quivered as she spoke. But the truth came pouring out like water breaking through a dam. She told me if I let you be part of this, she would cut me off from the family. She said no one would support me. She said you would embarrass me. She said I owed her because she was paying for everything. Vivian's eyes widened, her lips curling back in fury, but it was too late. The words had been spoken. The truth was out. Gasps, whispers, and shouts filled the hall. Some guests recoiled from Vivian. Others stared at Amelia with pity. Vivian tried to recover, stepping forward with venom in her voice. Ungrateful girl, I gave you everything. I gave you a future, and this is how you repay me. But the damage was done. The carefully built facade of her perfect celebration was crumbling in front of hundreds of witnesses. That was when I noticed a man at the back of the room, filming everything with his phone. His eyes met mine, and he gave me a subtle nod. It was Clara's cousin, Tom, the same one who had once warned me about Vivian's family's tactics. Relief surged through me. Proof was piling up. This was no longer just my word against hers. Vivian, sensing her grip slipping, made one last desperate move. She lunged for my phone, her fingers clawing at the device. But in her frenzy, she stumbled against the table, sending glasses of champagne crashing to the floor. Gasps erupted as the mighty Vivian, always poised, now looked frantic and wild. Security hesitated, unsure whether to obey her earlier commands or to protect me. The crowd's mood had shifted. The power she wielded was cracking, like glass under too much pressure. I raised my voice, loud and unshakable. If you are watching this, if you have ever known the pain of being silenced, share this story. Do not let people like her control the ones we love. The words carried across the hall, landing like stones in the hearts of every guest. My call to action was not just for the crowd but for everyone who would hear this story beyond the walls of this ballroom. Vivian staggered to her feet, her silk gown torn at the seam, her perfect facade shattered. She hissed like a cornered animal. You will regret this. But for the first time in years, I felt powerful. I looked at Amelia, her eyes red but filled with relief, and I knew the tide had turned. The celebration that was supposed to cement Vivian's control was unraveling, and what came next would expose even darker secrets hiding behind the glittering lights of that ballroom. Because this was no ordinary wedding. It was a battlefield, and the war had only just begun. The morning sun filtered through my curtains, but the brightness felt like a cruel joke. My daughter's wedding was days away. Yet every moment leading up to it seemed designed to remind me that I was an outsider in what should have been my proudest role as a mother. You might think a wedding is meant to unite families, but for me, it became the stage where betrayal, manipulation, and heartbreak took center place. If you are hearing my story, stay with me, because what unfolded next will leave you questioning the very meaning of family loyalty. I tried to focus on the small things that morning. I brewed a pot of coffee, poured it into my favorite porcelain cup, and sat at the kitchen table where I had once taught my daughter how to tie her shoelaces, how to recite multiplication tables, how to prepare for spelling bees. All those memories came rushing back as I stirred sugar into my cup. What was it all for? I wondered. If the moment of her biggest celebration, I was pushed aside like an afterthought. The phone buzzed on the table, breaking my trance. It was a message from Emily, my daughter. My heart skipped a beat, hoping she had finally realized what she was doing, hoping she had remembered I was her mother and not some stranger to be excluded. I opened the message quickly, but what I saw cut through me like glass. Mom, I need you to be respectful during the wedding. Do not make things harder than they already are. Please don't start any trouble with Daniel's family. Respectful trouble was my very presence now considered disruptive. My fingers trembled over the screen as I typed a reply, but I stopped myself. What could I say that would not push her further away? That was when I realized this was not Emily's voice. It was carefully crafted, influenced, planted by another hand, Daniel's mother. A knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, a delivery man stood holding a garment bag. "Delivery for Mrs. Harper," he said, handing it over. I unzipped the bag and felt the air catch in my throat. Inside was a pale gray dress, shapeless and dull, with a note pinned to the sleeve, "Mother of the bride, approved attire." My knees nearly gave out. Approved attire. Who had decided what I should wear to my own daughter's wedding? The message was clear. I was to blend into the background, to be invisible, to stand aside while another woman, Daniel's mother, took center stage. I picked up the phone immediately and called. "Emily." She answered after a long pause, her voice tight and hurried. "Mom, I don't have time for this. The dress is fine. Just wear it and please don't make things harder." Her words slammed into me. "Emily," I said, my voice breaking, "is this really what you want? Or is someone else making these choices for you?" There was silence on the line, followed by a faint sigh. "Mom, please, don't ruin this day for me. I'm begging you." Then the line went dead. I sat in the living room holding that lifeless gray dress. That was the moment I realized the wedding was not just a ceremony. It was a battlefield, and I had been stripped of my weapons before the first shot was fired. That evening, determined not to let despair swallow me, I decided to attend a family dinner Emily had mentioned weeks before. It was at Daniel's parents' house, an opportunity, I thought, to mend the cracks. When I arrived, the atmosphere was thick with laughter and chatter, but it fell silent when I stepped inside. Daniel's mother, Veronica, stood at the head of the table, her posture regal and unyielding. "Ah, you made it," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We weren't sure you would be able to join us." The table was set extravagantly, silverware polished, crystal glasses gleaming. Emily sat beside Daniel, her face pale, her eyes darting nervously between me and his mother. I forced a smile, greeted everyone, and sat down, though the chair seemed colder than stone. As dishes were passed around, Veronica began her performance. She spoke of wedding details, of the grand arrangements she had overseen, of the traditions her family valued. Each word was a reminder that she was in control. Then came the blow that made the entire table still. "We are so grateful," Veronica said, raising her glass, "that Emily has chosen to embrace our family traditions so wholeheartedly. It is a blessing when a daughter decides to honor the family that will guide her future." The words were pointed. They pierced me more deeply than I could show. Emily nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. She would not meet my eyes. I felt rage boiling under my skin, but I swallowed it down. This was her tactic, to provoke me, to make me look like the disruptive one. I forced myself to sip from my glass, though my throat burned. Then, as the dinner continued, Veronica leaned close across the table. Her voice was soft enough for only me to hear. "You should know, Eleanor, there will be no place for you at the head table. It has already been decided. A quiet seat in the back will suit you better." My heart pounded. "You cannot erase me from my daughter's life," I whispered back. Her lips curved into a cruel smile. "Watch me." Her lips curved into a cruel smile. "Watch me." I left that dinner shaken to my core. The trap was tightening around me, and Emily was caught in the middle, unable or unwilling to fight for me. But I also knew something Veronica did not. She thought she could control every moment, but her arrogance would be her undoing. The next day, while running errands in town, I overheard two florists speak. They were discussing Veronica's order for the wedding flowers. Extravagant arrangements worth more than what some families spent on their entire weddings. But they also mentioned a last-minute change that puzzled me. Veronica had demanded a specific type of flower, one that carried a hidden meaning, one that spoke not of joy but of betrayal. Curiosity gnawed at me. I returned home and pulled out my old family albums, searching through notes and keepsakes. My late husband had once studied flowers and their symbolism. Among his notes, I found what I was looking for. The flower Veronica had chosen symbolized estrangement between mother and child. It was not just a wedding. It was a statement, a declaration that I no longer belonged. My hands shook as I closed the book. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was darker than I had ever imagined. Veronica was not just excluding me. She was rewriting my role in Emily's life, reshaping the narrative so that when the wedding day arrived, everyone would see her as the rightful mother figure. But what Veronica did not know was that I had a voice, and I intended to use it. This battle was far from over. The rehearsal was supposed to be a day of joy, a chance for families to come together before the big ceremony. Instead, it became the moment when the cracks in the foundation of my daughter's marriage widened into a fault line that threatened to shatter everything. If you think you know what betrayal feels like, listen closely, because what happened that day left me questioning whether my daughter was truly mine anymore, or if I had lost her completely to a woman who wanted nothing more than to erase me. I arrived at the church early, determined to hold my head high despite the storm brewing inside me. The building itself was beautiful, with stained glass windows casting colored patterns across the wooden pews, but even that beauty could not ease the weight pressing on my chest. I carried with me the dull gray dress Veronica had chosen for me, though every fiber of my being screamed against wearing it. I had decided I would bring it to the rehearsal as a gesture of compliance, though in my heart I knew compliance was not the path I would take. When I entered, the bridal party was already gathering. Emily stood at the front, her white rehearsal dress flowing around her, her hands clasped nervously. Daniel was beside her, his arm looped through hers, though he looked more like a guard holding onto a prisoner than a groom comforting his bride. Veronica hovered nearby, her sharp eyes scanning every detail as though she were orchestrating a grand performance. As I walked down the aisle, heads turned, the chatter quieted. Veronica's lips curved into that familiar, patronizing smile. "Eleanor," she said, her voice carrying a false warmth, "so glad you could join us. I was worried you might be late." I met her gaze, unflinching. I would not miss my daughter's rehearsal. The minister began outlining the order of the ceremony, directing where everyone would stand. As he spoke, Veronica interrupted frequently, correcting him, adjusting details, insisting that traditions be followed according to her family's standards. I stood quietly, watching, waiting, until the moment came when the minister said, "And the mother of the bride will be escorted to the front row." Before I could step forward, Veronica's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Actually, she will be seated toward the side. It is less distracting that way." A stunned silence fell. Emily's head snapped toward her, her eyes wide. "Mother belongs in the front row," she whispered, her voice shaky but firm. Veronica's smile never faltered. "Traditionally, in our family, the matriarch takes that seat. It will be me." The words reverberated through the church. My heart pounded as the truth settled in. Veronica was not only erasing me from the ceremony, she was stepping into my role, stealing it as if it had always belonged to her. I felt the heat rise in my chest. "With all due respect," I said, my voice trembling but loud enough for every ear to hear, "I am Emily's mother. That seat is mine, and no tradition, yours or otherwise, can change that." Gasps echoed across the pews. Daniel's face hardened, his jaw tight. Emily looked torn, her eyes flicking between me and her future mother. The minister cleared his throat nervously, unsure how to proceed. Veronica's eyes glittered with malice. She stepped closer, her voice low but venomous. "If you make a scene here, Eleanor, you will regret it. Think carefully before you embarrass your daughter on the most important day of her life." For a moment, the room seemed to spin. I saw Emily's face, pale and anxious. I saw Daniel, his hand gripping her arm tighter, as if trying to keep her under control. I saw Veronica standing tall and confident, certain she had won. But then something unexpected happened. One of the bridesmaids, a childhood friend of Emily's, stepped forward. Her voice rang clear. "Emily has always talked about how her mother was her hero. She belongs in that seat." The courage in her voice sent a ripple through the room. Another bridesmaid nodded. Even one of Daniel's relatives shifted uncomfortably. as though questioning the fairness of Veronica's decree. Veronica's smile faltered for the first time. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for control slipping from her fingers, but she recovered quickly, turning her gaze back to me. "We will see," she said softly, a threat disguised as compromise. The rehearsal continued, though the tension was thick enough to choke on. When it was time to practice the procession, I stood at the back, watching as Emily walked down the aisle with Daniel. She looked radiant but tense, her smile forced, her eyes clouded. The minister prompted the family to join in the seating arrangements, and once again Veronica tried to take the place that was not hers. This time, I did not move. I stayed rooted in my spot. "I will not sit anywhere until my daughter tells me where I belong," I said. The room froze, every eye on Emily. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "Mom, please," she whispered, almost too quietly to hear. Then, louder, with tears forming in her eyes, she said, "Sit in the front. You are my mother." The air shifted. For a moment, it seemed like victory, fragile but real. I walked to the front row, my steps heavy but determined, and sat down where I belonged. Veronica's face twisted into a mask of fury, though she tried to conceal it behind a brittle smile. But the victory was short-lived. As the rehearsal ended and people began to disperse, Veronica cornered me near the church doors. Her voice was ice. "You think you won, but you have no idea what is coming. Tomorrow, you will wish you had walked away." Her words were a dagger, but they also revealed her desperation. She was planning something far bigger than seating arrangements or dresses. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she held herself, as if she had already written the ending to this story. I left the church that evening with my heart pounding. The battle lines had been drawn, and the war was far from over. But what Veronica did not know was that I was no longer afraid of her threats. She had awakened a part of me I had long buried, a strength that came not from control or manipulation, but from love for my daughter. Yet, even as I resolved to stand my ground, a gnawing fear twisted inside me. Veronica had power, influence, and a willingness to cross lines I had never imagined, and as I would soon learn, her next move would not just target me, it would target Emily in a way that could shatter her entire world. The morning of the wedding should have been a day of pride, a moment every mother dreams of. Instead, for me, it was a day shadowed by dread. If you think weddings are filled only with love and unity, you need to hear what happened at my daughter's. Because by the time the ceremony began, everything Emily thought she knew about family loyalty would be ripped apart, and the celebration she had envisioned would collapse right before her eyes. I woke before dawn, unable to sleep, my mind restless with Veronica's threats from the rehearsal. Her words echoed in my head. "Tomorrow, you will wish you had walked away." It was not just a warning, it was a promise. And if I had learned anything about Veronica, it was that she never spoke idly. She had a plan, and she intended to carry it out, no matter who she destroyed in the process. I dressed carefully, not in the dull gray garment she had sent me, but in a gown of my own, choosing a soft blue dress that reflected both dignity and grace. It was a statement, small yet powerful. I would not let her silence me. I would not allow her to reduce me to a shadow at my own daughter's wedding. When I arrived at the church, the place was alive with chatter and movement. Guests in elegant attire filled the pews, music floated through the air, and photographers darted about capturing every detail. But beneath the surface of the beauty, I felt the tension, sharp as glass. People's eyes lingered on me longer than usual, whispers fluttered in the corners, and though I smiled politely, I knew the storm was already brewing. As I walked toward my seat, an usher hesitated, glancing uncertainly between me and Veronica, who was stationed like a queen at the head of the aisle. She wore a gown dripping with jewels, her hair styled like royalty, her presence commanding every gaze. She gave the usher a slight shake of her head, signaling me to the side rows. I stepped closer, my voice steady. "My daughter asked me to sit in the front. That is where I belong." The usher froze, caught between us. A silence spread through the nearest rows as people turned to watch. Emily appeared from the side, her face pale beneath her veil. "She sits in the front," Emily said firmly, her voice trembling but clear. Reluctantly, the usher led me forward. Veronica's smile faltered, her eyes blazing with fury, but she said nothing. For the moment, I had won again, but I could feel it in my bones. This was only the beginning. The ceremony began with the soft chords of the organ. Guests rose as Emily walked down the aisle, her white gown glowing in the stained glass light. My eyes filled with tears as I watched her, my daughter, my little girl, taking steps toward a new life. For a moment, all the pain, all the conflict, faded into the background. I wanted to hold on to that moment forever, but peace never lasts where Veronica is concerned. As the minister spoke, as vows were exchanged, I noticed movement in the back of the church. A group of unfamiliar faces slipped in quietly, dressed formally yet strangely out of place. They carried folders, cameras, and an energy that did not belong to wedding guests. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, a sharp voice pierced the air. "I do." The room gasped as a man stood from the back, tall and stern, holding a folder thick with papers. "I represent creditors with a vested interest in the groom's family. This wedding cannot proceed without disclosure." Chaos erupted. Guests murmured in shock. Daniel stiffened at the altar, his face draining of color. Emily's veil trembled as she looked at him in horror. Veronica sprang to her feet, her voice sharp. "This is outrageous. How dare you interrupt?" But the man ignored her, stepping forward. "Daniel and his family are under investigation for financial fraud. Marrying into this family without disclosure places your daughter at risk. Documents are here for anyone who wishes to see." Gasps filled the church. Cameras flashed. Whispers turned into shouts. Emily clutched Daniel's arm, her face pale, her lips quivering. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Daniel stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "It is complicated. I was going to explain. You were going to explain when—" Emily's voice rose. "After I signed my life into your lies." The scene spiraled into chaos. Guests began standing, some moving toward the exits, others pressing forward to catch every detail. Veronica, red with fury, stormed down the aisle, toward the man. "This is a private family matter," she snapped. "You have no right to be here." But the man held his ground, producing official documents. "Fraud is never a private matter, Mrs. Whitmore. You can threaten me, but the truth cannot be buried." The minister stood frozen, uncertain whether to continue or to end the ceremony. Emily turned toward me, her eyes brimming with tears, her whole body trembling. "Mom, what do I do?" In that moment, everything slowed. The girl I had raised, the child who had trusted me with her fears and her dreams, was pleading for guidance in the middle of her collapsing celebration. My heart ached, but I knew the truth had to be faced. "Emily," I said softly but firmly, "you cannot build a future on lies. Walk away before it is too late." Her face crumpled as Daniel tried to speak, but she pulled her hand from his grip. "You lied to me," she whispered. "You let your family hide everything, and you let her," she pointed at Veronica, "control every part of my life. I cannot do this." The church erupted in shocked cries. Emily turned and fled down the aisle, her gown billowing, tears streaming. Daniel chased after her, but she pushed him away at the doors. The photographers, sensing a scandal, surged forward, capturing every heart-wrenching moment. Veronica stood frozen, her mask cracking. For the first time, she had no words, no smile, no power. She had built her empire of control on secrecy, and now it was crumbling in front of everyone. I remained seated, my hands gripping the pew, my heart racing. I had not planned this revelation, but I knew in that instant that the truth was the only thing that could shatter Veronica's hold. The creditors, the investigators, whoever those men were, had chosen this moment deliberately. And though it had brought chaos, it had also set Emily free. The ceremony was over, but the story was far from finished. As guests poured out, as whispers of scandal filled the air, I caught sight of Veronica slipping away, her face twisted in determination. She had lost this battle, but the war in her mind was not over. She was planning her next move, and I knew it would be even darker than what we had just endured. Emily collapsed into my arms outside the church, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, I should have listened to you. I should have seen it." I held her tightly, my own tears falling. "You saw it when you needed to, my love. That is what matters." But even as I comforted her, even as I felt the fragile relief of truth revealed, I sensed the storm had not passed. Veronica would not accept defeat, and the next chapter of this nightmare would reveal just how dangerous a mother-in-law could be when her pride and control were at stake. The morning after the disaster at the reception, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the faded wedding photograph of my own youth. My husband and I had looked so full of hope, our smiles unshaken by doubts. I wondered if my daughter ever looked at that picture and understood how much of my heart had gone into giving her the chance at a beautiful celebration. But instead of gratitude, I had been dismissed, disrespected, and humiliated in front of everyone who once thought of me as a woman with dignity. If you are watching this, make sure you subscribe and tell me in the comments, would you forgive your daughter if she chose her mother-in-law over you? Or would you take the kind of stand I took? I need to know what you think because the world judged me already, and I wonder if I was wrong. The phone on the nightstand buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from one of my relatives who had attended the wedding. You did the right thing. Everyone was talking about how cold they treated you. Don't let them twist the story against you. For a brief second, relief swept over me. I wasn't insane. People saw the truth. But before I could respond, another message arrived. This time from my daughter. I need to see you. Come to the house today. We need to talk. Her words dripped with urgency, but not affection. There was no mom or I love you at the end. Just a command, short and sharp. I held my breath, my fingers trembling over the phone. Should I go? Should I let her see that I was still willing to bend even after she had broken me? Curiosity clawed harder than pride. I had to know what she wanted. When I arrived at her home, I could feel the tension before I even stepped inside. The curtains were drawn tight, as though the house itself was ashamed. I knocked, and she opened the door in silence. Her makeup was smeared, her hair undone. She looked nothing like the glowing bride from the day before. Sit, she muttered, pointing to the couch. I sat, my back stiff, while she paced the floor like a caged animal. Finally, she stopped and faced me. Her eyes were red, her lips quivering. Do you know what you've done? She asked. That the question hit me like a slap. What I've done? You're asking me that? Yes, she screamed, her voice cracking. Everyone is blaming me. My new husband's family is furious. They say I embarrassed them. His mother won't even speak to me. She says I've brought shame to their family name. The irony almost made me laugh. And now you know how it feels, I said bitterly. Now you understand what it is to be humiliated in front of everyone. But you did this to yourself. Her hands shook as she pointed at me. No, you did this. If you had just stayed quiet, if you had just played your role like his family wanted, everything would have been fine. The air in the room grew heavy. My daughter, the girl I had raised, the child I had carried inside me was standing in front of me and accusing me of ruining her life because I had refused to bow down like a servant. Something inside me snapped. Your husband's mother wanted me erased, and you allowed it. Do you think I don't see it? Do you think I don't know how she poisoned you against me? She wanted the spotlight, and you gave it to her. You chose her over your own mother, and now you want me to fix it. Tears spilled down her face, but her silence was louder than any confession. She didn't deny it. She didn't say I was wrong. I leaned forward, my voice cutting like glass. Listen carefully. I will not apologize. I will not crawl back to please her. If your marriage collapses because you allowed another woman to control you, that is not my burden to carry. Her body slumped as though the weight of the words crushed her bones. She sat down across from me, her sobs echoing through the room. For a moment, my heart ached. The mother in me wanted to reach out, to comfort her like I had done 1,000 times when she scraped her knees or cried over heartbreak. But the woman in me, the one who had been disrespected, discarded, and humiliated, refused to let compassion erase the truth. The silence between us stretched until she finally whispered, I don't know what to do. They won't forgive me unless you come and apologize. They say the only way this can be repaired is if you bow down in front of them. The request drained the last ounce of love I had left to give. Do you hear yourself? I asked, my voice shaking with rage. You want me to kneel in front of the people who wanted me erased from your wedding. You want me to grovel like I am nothing. No, child, never, not even for you. Her sobbing turned into screams. Then you'll destroy my marriage. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. If your marriage depends on me being humiliated, then your marriage was never built on love. It was built on control, and control never lasts. Her husband walked in at that very moment, his eyes dark, his jaw clenched. He looked at me as though I were poison. Leave, he commanded. I held my head high, gladly, but as I turned to the door, my daughter grabbed my arm, her nails dug into my skin, her tears blurring her face. Please, please don't go. I'm begging you, just this once. Give them what they want. I can't survive this without you. Her desperation was real, but so was my resolve. I pulled my arm free and looked her in the eye. You already chose your side. Now you must live with it. I walked out, closing the door on the only daughter I had, feeling as though I had buried her alive. But But the story did not end there. 2 days later, a message appeared on social media. A video had leaked from the wedding. In it, her new mother-in-law was caught on camera, sneering at me during the reception, saying, "She's nothing. She's not even worthy of sitting here. Just wait. By tomorrow she'll be gone." The video spread like wildfire. People who once whispered about me now sent messages of apology and support. Strangers told me I was right to walk away. The irony was brutal. The very thing my daughter had begged me to fix had been destroyed, not by me, but by the truth her new family could no longer hide. And as I watched that video play over and over, I realized something. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not sacrifice, but refusal. Refusal to let yourself be diminished, even for those you love most. So I ask you again, viewers, what would you have done? Would you have bowed down to save your daughter's marriage? Or would you have stood tall, as I did? Tell me in the comments, because maybe one day, my daughter will see this, and she will understand. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds, but it did nothing to warm me. My phone would not stop vibrating. Notifications, calls, messages, my name was suddenly everywhere. The video of my humiliation and the cruel words of my daughter's new mother-in-law had turned me into a storm. If you are watching this, pause for a second and ask yourself, what would you do if the world suddenly took your side, but your own daughter still stood against you? Would you forgive her, or would you let her drown in the mess she created? Subscribe and comment below, because this choice was the hardest of my life. By noon, reporters were at my doorstep. Cameras, microphones, flashing lights. People wanted my story. Neighbors who once ignored me now whispered my name like I was a legend. Yet, in the middle of all that chaos, my heart was heavy, because behind the flashing cameras was my daughter, trapped in the wreckage of her own decisions. When the video went viral, her husband's family was furious. They tried to silence it, but the internet never forgets. Every cruel word, every sneer, every insult they threw at me was replayed on loop across platforms. Strangers condemned them. Hashtags spread like wildfire. And in the center of it all, my daughter's marriage began to crumble. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find her standing there, eyes swollen, hair tangled, her dress wrinkled. She looked nothing like the radiant bride from days ago. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Can I come in?" Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "They hate me. They blame me for everything. His family says I brought shame into their home. They say it's my fault this video spread. They're threatening to cut me off if I don't make you apologize publicly." Her words were daggers. Even now, she was asking me to humiliate myself to save her marriage. I sat across from her, my voice steady but cold. "Do you hear yourself? After everything, you still expect me to sacrifice my dignity for people who despise me. For people who despise you?" She lifted her face, tears glistening. "I don't know what else to do. If you don't, I'll lose him." The room went silent. Her words echoed in my ears. Lose him, not lose us, not lose myself. She had tied her entire existence to a man who allowed his family to destroy her mother. I leaned forward. "And what will you have left if you lose yourself? If you give them the power to control every choice you make? Today, they demand my apology. Tomorrow they will demand more. And you will keep giving, until nothing remains." She shook her head violently. "You don't understand. You're ruining everything." I stood, my heart breaking but my resolve stronger than ever. "No, child, I am saving myself. And one day, you will thank me for showing you what it looks like to refuse chains, no matter who holds them." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls trembled. I thought it would be the last time I saw her for a while. I was wrong. The next day, I received a letter in the mail, not a text, not a caller letter, delivered by hand. It was from my daughter's husband. Inside, the words dripped with venom. "Stay away from us. You are not welcome in our home, our lives, or our future. If you love your daughter, you will disappear quietly. She belongs to us now, not to you." I felt my blood run cold. The letter was not just cruel, it was a declaration of war. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, every corner filled with memories of raising her, her laughter in the kitchen, her footsteps running down the hallway, her childhood drawings still tucked into drawers. I had given her everything, and now a man who barely knew her claimed to own her. My hands shook as I picked up the letter again. "She belongs to us now." The words burned in my mind. If you are still listening, imagine hearing that your own child, your flesh and blood, was no longer yours, but property of another family. What would you do? Would you fight back, or would you surrender quietly? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know if I'm the only mother who sees the horror in those words. By dawn, I made my decision. I put on my coat and drove to their house. When I arrived, I could see them through the window, my daughter sitting at the table, her husband standing above her, his mother whispering in his ear like a serpent. My daughter's shoulders slumped, her eyes lifeless. She was no longer the girl I raised. She was a puppet. I knocked, and when the door opened, I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked straight in, the letter clutched in my hand. You think you can erase me? I demanded, slamming the paper onto the table. You think you can own my daughter as if she were a trophy? She is not your property. She is not your possession. And if you continue to treat her this way, you will lose her faster than you ever imagined. His mother stood, her face twisting with rage. You dare come here after the disgrace you caused? You are nothing. You were nothing at the wedding, and you are nothing now. I turned to my daughter, my eyes pleading. Is this what you want? To live under her thumb? To watch your husband treat me like dirt, and someday treat you the same? For a moment, silence stretched like a knife. My daughter's lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know who I am anymore. Her husband slammed his fist on the table. She knows exactly who she is. She's my wife, and she'd do as she's told. That was the breaking point. I stepped closer, my voice calm but deadly. No, she will not, because I raised her better than this. I raised her to stand on her own feet, and if you think you can chain her, you will soon learn that a woman with fire in her blood cannot be caged forever. The room erupted in shouting, accusations, tears, but as I walked out, I saw something flicker in my daughter's spark. Maybe small, maybe fragile, but it was there. That night, I lay in bed, exhausted but unbroken. For the first time, I realized this battle was not just mine, it was hers too. She would either find the strength I had given her, or she would be lost. And as I closed my eyes, I knew one thing for certain: this war was only beginning. So I ask you once more, to everyone listening, if your child chose another family over you, if they demanded your silence to keep their fragile marriage intact, would you give it to them, or would you stand tall, even if it meant standing alone? Subscribe, comment, and let me know, because my story is far from over. And your voice may be the one that reminds me, I am not alone. And your voice may be the one that reminds me, I am not alone. When the world decides to watch you bleed, you either collapse or turn the wound into a weapon. That morning, I realized I could no longer sit quietly and hope my daughter would find her way back. She was drowning, and the people who claimed to love her were the ones pressing her head beneath the water. If you are listening to me right now, ask yourself, what would you do if your child begged you to disappear for the sake of a marriage that was already poisoned? Would you obey, or would you fight to show them the truth? Comment your answer, because this choice cut me open in ways I never thought possible. The video had gone from viral to unstoppable. News stations were replaying it. Talk shows debated it. Words like toxic in-laws and family betrayal were trending. My phone rang endlessly with interview requests, but the call that froze me came from an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end was sharp, cold, and familiar. It was Veronica. You think you've won, she hissed, but you've destroyed your daughter's life. She cannot step outside without being branded a disgrace. Her marriage is in shambles because of you. If you love her, Eleanor, you will disappear. Leave the city, leave her alone, and stop feeding this fire. Otherwise, the next thing to go viral will destroy her completely. The line went dead before I could reply. For hours, I sat there, shaking. Her threat wasn't empty. She had money, connections, and a cruelty that had no bottom. But her words revealed something important. She was afraid. She could no longer control the narrative, and that meant I still had power. That evening, I received a message from Emily. It was short, frantic, and full of pain. Please, Mom, meet me. I can't take it anymore. Come alone. I rushed to the address. She sent a small park on the edge of town where we used to walk when she was a teenager. The lamps glowed dimly, casting long shadows across the empty benches. And there she was, sitting with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, eyes swollen from crying. She looked up when she saw me, her lips trembling. I don't know what to do. They're tearing me apart. I sat beside her, placing a hand on hers. Then leave them. Come home. She shook her head violently. I can't. If I leave, I lose everything. Daniel says, if I walk away now, I'll never see him again. His mother told me I'd be nothing without their family. Her words shattered me. You are not nothing. I said firmly. You are everything I ever fought for. You are my daughter. But if you stay, you will lose yourself piece by piece until there's nothing left to save. She sobbed, her body shaking. What if I'm too weak? What if I've already lost myself? I lifted her chin so she would look at me. You are not weak. The fact that you asked me here proves that. Deep down, you know the truth. And the truth is, you do not belong to them. You never did. You belong to yourself. Before she could answer, headlights flashed across the park. A car screeched to a halt, and Daniel stormed out, his face twisted with rage. Veronica followed close behind, her heels striking the pavement like gunshots. So, this is what you do, Daniel shouted, sneaking around with your mother, feeding the gossip, making us a joke in front of the whole world. Emily froze, fear written across her face. I stood, stepping between them. She came to me because you suffocate her, because you leave her no space to breathe. Veronica's voice was like poison. You will regret this, Eleanor. Do you realize the damage you've caused? My son's career is threatened. Our family name is dragged through the mud. And you think you're the hero. You are a disgrace. And we will not stop until you are nothing but ashes. People walking their dogs in the park stopped, watching. Phones came out, cameras recorded. Every word Veronica spat, every insult Daniel hurled at, was all being captured. And then, in front of those witnesses, Daniel grabbed Emily's arm so hard she cried out. The sound pierced the night, sharp and undeniable. Gasps echoed around us as strangers shouted for him to let her go. I lunged forward, my voice booming. Get your hands off my daughter. For the first time, Emily pulled away from him, her body shaking with fury. Stop it, she screamed. Stop treating me like I'm your property. Stop trying to erase my mother. Stop pretending this is love when it's nothing but control. The entire park went silent. All eyes were on her, trembling but unbroken, standing between two worlds, Daniel's face contorted with rage. Veronica reached for him, whispering frantically. But the damage was done. The truth was no longer hidden. Strangers were recording every second, and the narrative was no longer theirs to control. Emily turned to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mom, I don't know if I can fix this, but I know I can't live like this anymore. I wrapped my arms around her as the crowd murmured and cameras flashed. Then don't walk away. Come home. But the night was far from over, because, as we left the park, escorted by strangers who wanted to protect us from Daniel's rage, a car pulled up fast beside us. The window rolled down, and a voice snarled from the darkness. This isn't over, Eleanor. You've made enemies you cannot defeat. The car sped off into the night, leaving exhaust and fear in its wake. Back at home, Emily curled up on the couch, trembling like a child again. For the first time in days, she fell asleep in my arms. But I did not sleep. I sat awake, watching her, knowing that the storm had only grown stronger. If you are still listening, hear me now. When you fight people who thrive on control, they will come at you with everything they have. But love is stronger than fear. I need you to remember that. Subscribe, share, tell me what you would do, because this war is not over. The twist waiting for us was darker than anything I could have imagined. The night after the park confrontation, I thought I could finally breathe. Emily was asleep in her childhood bed, her face pale but peaceful for the first time since her wedding. I told myself she was safe under my roof. But safety is an illusion when you are fighting people who have no limits. If you are listening now, tell me this. What would you do if your enemies decided that breaking you was not enough, that they wanted to erase you completely? Would you run, or would you fight even harder? Comment your answer, because the choice I made next would change everything. The morning came, with pounding fists on my front door. I opened it to find two police officers standing grim-faced on the porch. One of them held a folded paper. Are you Eleanor Grant? Yes, you've been served. My hands trembled as I took the document, a restraining order, filed by Veronica and her son. According to the paper, I was accused of harassment, trespassing, and even threats. They painted me as the aggressor, a dangerous woman who had ruined their daughter-in-law's life. My stomach twisted. This is a lie, I whispered. The officer shrugged, indifferent. Take it up in court. But until then, you are to stay away from their property and their family. Their family. My daughter, my own child, had been listed under their protection. When the officers left, I sank onto the floor, clutching the paper in my hands. The cruelty of it burned through me. Not only had they tried to steal my daughter, they had twisted the law itself to chain me. Emily woke to find me shaking with rage. She read the document, her hands flying to her mouth. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't sign this. They must have used my name. Her tears were real, her panic genuine, but the damage was done. I was legally bound to keep my distance, or risk being arrested. If you think this broke me, you are wrong. It ignited something far stronger. That afternoon, I walked into a law office downtown. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen, listened carefully as I explained everything. She leaned back in her chair, lips pressed together. This is intimidation. They are using the system to silence you. But if what you say is true, and you have witnesses, we can fight this. Do you have proof? Proof. That word rang in my ears. I thought of the park, the videos, the strangers who had filmed Daniel's outburst and Veronica's threats. I pulled out my phone and showed her the flood of clips circulating online. Karen's eyes narrowed. This changes everything. They wanted to silence you, but they handed you a weapon. With this, we can not only fight the restraining order, we can expose them in court. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. But hope is dangerous, because that night, while Emily and I ate dinner in silence, a brick smashed through my living room window. Glass rained across the floor. Emily screamed. I rushed to the shattered window, heart pounding, and saw a car speeding away into the night. Taped to the brick was a note. Stop, or you'll regret it. Emily sobbed into her hands. They'll never let us go. I held her tightly, my voice steady, though my body shook. Then we don't stop. We fight harder. The next morning, Karen filed an emergency petition in court, submitting the videos as evidence of abuse and harassment not from me, but against me. The story flipped overnight. Headlines shifted. Commentators who once speculated about family drama now discussed power, control, and emotional abuse. The pressure mounted, and Daniel cracked first. He showed up at my house uninvited, pacing on the porch, shouting through the door, "Emily, open this door. You're my wife. You belong with me, not with her." Emily froze in the hallway, tears streaming. I stood at the window, watching him. "Leave," I said through the glass. He slammed his fists against the door. "You can't keep her from me. I'll take her back. Do you hear me? I'll take her. I'll take her." Neighbors gathered outside, phones in hand. Every word, every threat was recorded. By the time police arrived, the internet already had it. That night, Emily sat beside me, staring into space. "I don't know who he is anymore," she whispered. "He was supposed to love me, but it feels like I'm his prisoner." I stroked her hair gently. "That's because you were, but you are free now, and we will make sure they never touch you again." But I was wrong. The next twist came 3 days later, in the courtroom. Veronica arrived in a tailored suit, her head high, her lips curled in that familiar smirk. Daniel sat beside her, pale and stiff, but his eyes full of venom. Their lawyer painted me as a bitter woman, jealous of her daughter's new family, fabricating stories to ruin them. Then Karen stood, calm, precise. She played the videos. The courtroom filled with gasps as Veronica's words echoed. "She belongs to us now." Daniel's voice thundered. "She do as she's told." And Emily's cries pierced the silence. "Stop treating me like your property." The judge's gavel struck hard. Enough. The restraining order crumbled. Instead, an investigation was launched into them. Veronica's mask cracked. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. But fear makes dangerous people desperate. That night, after court, Emily received a message from an unknown number. "If you think this is over, you are wrong. Blood is thicker than law. Choose wisely, or you will lose everything." She stared at the screen, trembling. "Mom, what if they hurt us?" I wrapped my arms around her, my voice steady. "Let them come. We are not afraid anymore. If you are still here, tell me this. Have you ever faced someone who would rather burn everything to ashes than admit defeat?" That is what we were up against. Share your thoughts, because I need to know if you would stand as I did, or if you would run, because the next move they made was darker than I could have imagined, and it nearly cost me my daughter forever. The morning after the wedding was unlike any other. Instead of basking in the joy of her marriage, my daughter awoke to a storm she never anticipated. I had been patient for months, silent when I should have screamed, calm when I should have raged. But on her so-called happiest day, when she chose her mother-in-law over her own blood, I made a decision that would split her world wide open. "I need you to stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened next was not just shocking, it was the kind of twist people whisper about for years. If you have ever been pushed aside, abandoned by the very people you sacrificed for, then you will feel every word of what I am about to say. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe and tell me where you are watching from, because I want you by my side in every chapter of this journey. When I stepped out of the wedding hall the night before, I left behind more than just a celebration. I left behind years of tears, money, time, and unconditional love that had been trampled in front of strangers. The whispers, the judgmental stares, the smug smile on her mother-in-law's face, they all burned into me like a brand I could never erase. But as I walked away, something inside me shifted. I was no longer the weak, pleading mother desperate to be accepted. I was a woman who had nothing left to lose. And that made me dangerous. By the time dawn came, I had already put the first part of my plan into motion. All those expensive wedding bills, the venue, the dress, the catering, every last detail had been funded by me. And what my daughter and her husband never bothered to consider was that I still held the receipts, the contracts, and most importantly, the financial leverage. They thought I would quietly accept being humiliated, but they underestimated me. The first call I made was to the wedding venue manager. Cancel every pending payment. Void the final check, I said, my voice steady as steel. Send the bill directly to the newlyweds, effective immediately. The man hesitated, reminding me that my name was on the agreement, but I cut him off. Do as I say. I am withdrawing my guarantee. With those words, thousands of dollars of responsibility fell squarely on my daughter and her in-laws. Then, I contacted the bridal boutique. The stunning white gown she had twirled in, the one she boasted about in front of me while her mother-in-law clapped like a queen, it had never been fully paid for. I had only placed a deposit. By noon, the boutique had called her, demanding immediate payment or the dress would be reclaimed. I can only imagine the horror on her face when she realized her perfect day had been built on foundations she did not own. Every vendor, every photographer, every decorator, I called them all. The truth is, weddings are fragile, costly things, and without my silent hand holding it together, the entire structure collapsed within hours. The flowers were repossessed, the photography company withdrew their rights, and even the catering service sent notice that a balance remained. In one night, the beautiful fairy tale she had flaunted to the world turned into an avalanche of unpaid debts and public embarrassment. Do you see now? Actions have consequences. When you spit on the hand that feeds you, you should be ready to starve. But I was not done. The wedding was only one battlefield. The bigger war was still waiting. The inheritance. For years, I had carefully built a future for her. A home in her name, a savings account for emergencies, bonds that could have secured her children's education. She never knew the full extent of what I had prepared, because I wanted it to be a gift when the time was right. But that morning, as I sat with pen and paper, I revoked it all. Every document was rewritten. Every property transferred back under my sole ownership. By the time the sun set, my daughter was no longer my heir. The tears I had cried at her betrayal hardened into ink on the pages of my new will. And do you know who I left everything to? Not her. Not the man who smirked beside her at the altar. Not the in-laws who treated me like an intruder. I chose an organization that supports women abandoned by their families. Women who know the sting of rejection, just like me. Women who, unlike my daughter, would never throw their mothers to the wolves. The ripple effect of my actions spread quickly. Gossip ignited like wildfire. The very guests who had watched me leave the wedding in silence were now buzzing with rumors of financial ruin. Did you hear? The vendors are repossessing everything. I heard the mother cut her off. Entirely. Can you imagine losing everything overnight? What had been intended as her perfect triumph became a public downfall. And when she finally came to me, days later, her voice broken, her face pale, she asked the question I had waited to hear. Why, Mom, why would you do this to me? I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her clearly not as my little girl, but as a woman who had chosen someone else's approval over her mother's love. Because, I said, you chose her over me, and in doing so, you chose to lose everything I had ever given you. Actions have consequences. You made your decision. Now live with it. She broke down, sobbing on the floor. But there was no satisfaction in my heart, only a heavy, solemn truth. Sometimes the hardest thing a mother can do is let her child feel the weight of their own betrayal. This is not just my story, it is a warning to every parent who has been silenced, to every person cast aside in favor of strangers. Let my story remind you that silence is not weakness. We have power, and when pushed too far, we can rewrite the ending. So, if you are listening to me now, I want you to do one thing. Subscribe, share this story, and tell me if you have ever been betrayed by someone you loved more than life itself. Because stories like mine should not be buried. They should be told, so no one ever forgets what happens when a daughter chooses her mother-in-law over her own mother. That was the day her big celebration collapsed before her eyes, not because fate was cruel, but because I finally chose to stand.